I think it'll have a huge impact on 2026 because remember, as these changes, particularly the Medicaid changes, come into effect, people are going to be losing their coverage.
Longtime Republican strategist Karl Rove, when he was asked last week how he thinks the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill will affect future elections, Rove went on to say Republican members need to go on the offense in order to defend the bill after the anchors referenced a Fox News poll showing 59% of Americans have a negative view of the legislation, which President Trump signed into law on Friday. Steve Ratner will join us in a moment with charts on what the law means for Americans.
I want to bring in John Heilemann, though. It's interesting here, John. And of course, polls are just snapshots. And a lot of it depends on how do you sell things? How do you sell the polls politically? It's interesting, though, that President Trump's two big successes that certainly the White House would consider success, the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, and now the passage of this massive bill, both unpopular. The Iran bombing, 56% in a poll I saw, to 58% opposed the bombing. And of course, and we just talked about 59% opposing this bill. Again, this all plays out over time. We'll see what happens. It's certainly not where you want to start, though, with either of these big policies, right?
Well, 100%, obviously, Joe, and happy belated 4th. Hope you and Mika had a good long weekend. Did you guys get up to anything fun before we get into the serious business?
Hung out with my kids,
Nope.
So yeah, had a blast. A lot of kids.
Animals.
Kids.
Dogs,
animals,
cats.
Dogs.
5 animals.
Cats. No cows. No
pigs this year.
No pigs this year. No.
That sounds
Dogs,
perfect. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, what about you?
Here's the thing about the big beautiful bill. I had a very, very quiet 4th weekend, having been away for a little while before the 4th, and had a very quiet one. There was no fireworks anywhere nearby my house, which the dogs appreciated. I know, Mika, you know what that's like when the dogs are freaking out about the fireworks. Here's the thing, Joe, about popularity and unpopularity. Of course, it's a movable feast, and of course, it's going to change over time, particularly on the big bill, right? You've got a bill that a lot of the provisions that are the most unpopular don't start kicking in until after the midterms, including all these big Medicaid cuts. So the Democrats and our politics in general are going to have a kind of a space-time continuum problem, right, where the impact of the bill is not going to be felt for quite some time. That said, though, that bill is the most unpopular piece of legislation in 35 years that's come out of Washington. It's massively unpopular. But here's the other space-time continuum problem, is that it's really unpopular among anybody who knows anything about it. And as of right now, it's still the case that a lot of voters have no idea what's in the bill. So you have really this period, I think what Karl Rove is kind of alluding to, implicit in the comments that you guys played, is that between now and the midterms of next year, there's a lot of yardage, and the news cycle moves really fast. But both sides think that this bill is going to be at the center of the debate next fall, not this fall, but next fall. And so the battle to kind of define what was in this legislation, make people aware of what was in it, and then as it starts to hit people, trying to make the case for and against it, for on the Republican side and against on the Democratic side, is going to be a really protracted, complicated political dynamic.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Democrats have been so miserable in actually playing politics and being good at running campaigns and getting their message out there. So there are no givens when it comes to the Democratic Party, which has a lower approval rating now than it's ever had. I do wonder, though, if you're running for the House of Representatives, like I knew in '94, no Republican had been elected in my district since 1873. I knew I had my opponent right where I wanted him. If I were a Democrat running in 26, oh my gosh, I'd be sprinting out of the gate. You've got tax cuts, biggest tax cuts ever for billionaires, tax cuts for multinational corporations, tax cuts for Silicon Valley monopolists, slashing spending for rural health care in red states, also in blue states. You've got the largest deficits, the biggest federal debt ever. It's going to go up $4 trillion, and then $20 trillion over the next decade, something that we didn't do as a country for like over 230 years, accumulate that much debt. They're going to do it in one decade. This was just reckless on all fronts. I mean, I do wonder if there's well, I don't wonder, actually. There's just no conservatives left in Washington, D.C. There may be one or two. I'm dead serious. I can't think of a single person in my freshman class that came in 94 that would have voted for this bill, and we wouldn't have voted for this bill because we would have shut down the House before it even got to the floor. This is at least the way we framed being responsible with taxpayers' dollars. None of us would have allowed this out of committee. This is unspeakably bad, whether you're talking about deficits, whether you're talking about the federal debt, whether you're talking about what we're doing, not to future generations of Americans, but to ourselves and to our children, to our grandchildren. We are going to be leaving them 10 years from now with over $50 trillion federal debt. That's just not sustainable. It's going to crash the economy. And the Republicans that voted for this know it. Lisa Murkowski, who, quote, agonized over this, she knows it, and she voted for crippling debt and deficits anyway.
Well, right, and voted for a bill that she said. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever really heard anything quite like what Lisa Murkowski said when she said, essentially, I don't like this bill. I know it's going to hurt the country. I got a little bit of sweetener here from my state, which is my job as someone who represents Alaska. But I know this is a bad bill. I'm really hoping the House will fix it. An incredible thing for a United States Senator to say, regardless of what party you're in or what ideology you hew to. But, Joe, here's the thing that was even more striking to me. There were people, if you talk about your congressional experience here, in the House of Representatives, there were both hardline people on the right and moderates, or let's call them establishment Republicans, who after the Senate bill got passed, the Senate version got passed, who stood up and said for 24 hours, said, we can never support this bill without changes. We must have changes. And they had their various changes.
How do you do this? This is what I don't understand. How do you do this as a conservative? How do you say we're never going to vote for this bill, and then you collapse, then you fold? I don't understand it. We didn't do it. It's why we balanced the budget 4 years in a row. But these people that are in the, quote, Freedom Caucus, they all folded, and they all added $3.5 to $4 trillion onto America's national debt. They did it. They were responsible. They can never say they're conservative again. They can never say they give a damn about deficits or the federal debt again, because they don't.
And look, the moderates were just as bad, Joe. They were bad on both sides. And here's the thing that's stunning to me, though, is that generally when you stand up in the House of Representatives or in the Senate and say, I will never support this bill without changes, often the changes end up being cosmetic. They end up not being real important changes, but the president throws you a bone. Somehow, some change. These people stood up and said that, and said they were going to walk out. They would never support the bill, and then nothing changed. I mean, not a comma, not a semicolon, not a period in the bill. Not only were there not substantive changes, there weren't even paper changes. There weren't even cosmetic changes in the bill. I don't know how you look at yourself in the mirror if you're a member of Congress who stood up and said, I will never support the Senate version of the bill unless it changes, and then 2 days later support the Senate bill as written and as passed. It's an incredible like admission of impotence on the part of all these members.
So, Elise, as we're looking at what the Democrats have in front of them, the messaging opportunity, Joe articulated it pretty succinctly there. This is the largest transfer of wealth from the poorest to the rich, arguably in American history. Billionaires are seemingly in the bullseye if the left wants it. And yet, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, is saying, actually, I too oppose this thing. In fact, I oppose it so hard that I'm going to start a new party. as a result. And the Elon sort of like chess piece on the board here does and means what to you?
It means that he has a lot of money to play around with if he does want to have a spoiler effect in certain races. I really think that I'm looking less, though, at the Elon effect than just are the Democrats going to get their act together with messaging and have a coherent, sustained message on this? Are they going to be able to say they're taking your health care to pay for their tax cuts? Boom. It doesn't have to be complicated. It polls terribly among 75% of voters, according to some polling that I've seen, including Trump Republicans. The message that your health care is going to pay for tax cuts for the rich is not a popular one.